Gravity has some of the most realistic depictions of scientific concepts like space junk or debris, which is actually very accurate to what happens in real life. Although there are multiple ways of debris to be formed, from failed rocket launchers that just explode in outer space and create debris that collide with other satellites that are in orbit, to even some satellites that are inactive, which, believe it or not, there are plenty of inactive satellites in outer space. I think the rough estimate is that there are over 11,000 total satellites orbiting in outer space, and among those 11,000, only 3,000 and some change are actually actively working satellites. The rest of the satellites are just inactive and just floating around in space, which can just collide with other satellites that are either inactive or actually working, which can once again cause shrapnel to form. And these satellites collide with a speed of about 22,000 miles per hour, if not higher, which causes a huge amount of debris to be formed. And because they are in outer space, there is nothing slowing them down. So either they maintain the same speed or gain even more speed when they collide with other objects, and this causes a chain reaction where the debris just keep colliding with other satellites and form even more debris which collide with even more satellites, and so on and so forth. So they really nailed this part of the movie, but there are so many other things that this movie gets accurately. Like the jetpack that George Clooney was wearing in this movie. It operates on the same propulsion principles that the real life jetpack, Aviation JB9, I believe it's its name. Yeah, these two jetpacks operate on the same basic principles. So yeah, this movie does get a lot of things right. Also, NASA does provide you with a jetpack called Safer when you are going to outer space, although it has nowhere near the mileage of George Clooney's jetpack. But even though the movie manages to get so many things so accurately, at the end of the day, the job of a movie is to be entertaining, and that is the biggest drawback with having something be as scientifically accurate as possible, because it just needs to have a ton of exposition and complex concepts explained to us. The only movie that manages to do this really well, at least in my opinion, is Inside Out, which we really need to take a look at how that movie manages to make the world feel so accurate and also immersive. But that's a video for another day. The point of this video is to look at whether or not a movie that tries to be too accurate hinders or enhances the movie going experience. And the real answer is yes and a no, because it really depends on the concept you are trying to explain. And I think a great example of this is just regular everyday classes, when we have a fascinating concept that is being explained to us, like say in physics when they are talking about time and how the core of the earth is younger than its surface. It's a fascinating topic, at least for me it is. But when you are doing a derivation or figuring out the math of it all, it just becomes too convoluted and so boring. And that is a problem that generally does apply to movies as well, because we hate how complicated something really is and how boring it all really is. So when we are watching a movie, we just want to immerse ourselves in an experience and just be entertained, which is why even movies like Gravity don't necessarily stick to concepts of reality too often. I mean, this scene where George Clooney and Sandra Bullock are holding on to each other by a thread, and Clooney has to let go because he is going to kill the both of them, it's not actually accurate, because in real life they would have just bounced back. You're essentially weightless when you are in outer space, which also means that if you are going in a particular direction, full of momentum, and suddenly Sandra Bullock grabs you, I know it's really sounding like a fan fiction, but just go with me here. So if Sandra Bullock, in the exact same predicament that the movie is showing, grabs you, well, in real life, something that would be strong enough to bring the momentum of you drifting away to the abyss of space to a screeching halt would also immediately start pulling you towards its direction, at least a little bit. And just a little tug from Sandra Bullock would have brought George Clooney right back towards her, which doesn't happen in this movie. Instead, George Clooney has to release the tether and drift off. The movie decides to abandon the laws of physics and, well, reality in general, because this moment has tension and suspense, which just adds to the whole entertainment value of the movie, which is what the audience is really there to see. But that is not to say that a movie can just make things up, because then it would feel cheap and nonsensical, which is why most movies try to be as faithful to concepts and ideas like outer space travel, or even showcasing a culture as accurately as possible, but still takes some leeway for the purpose of making the story feel more entertaining and immersive. Which is why movies don't typically try to be too realistic, even though they can be, because it would be too boring, it would absolutely tank, and nobody would care about it. So basically, it's like the middle child of a family. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this and hope you have a great day. Goodbye.